Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew Ibarra, and in this video we're going to be exporting your currently deployed Azure policy resources like exemptions, policy assignments, policy definitions into EPAC templates automatically for you. This is typically the most valuable whenever you're first trying to start using EPAC and maybe you've deployed policies through manual deployments or through other means of IAC. But now you want to start using EPAC. And rather than having to build out all of the policy assignments and policy definitions manually, which typically takes maybe a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, depending on how many you have, you can do it quickly by one command that's part of the EPAC library. So let's go ahead and get started by taking a look at my current folder structure. I don't have any files currently populated within policy assignments, definitions, and so forth. This is a completely brand new slate. And what I'm going to do is cross-check quickly inside of my Azure portal. I have one assignment that's deployed at the tenant root group, this one called Demo Policy Assignment. And this one's referencing a custom policy set and a custom definition. All of this is manually deployed. So it's not part of EPAC, as I showed. It's not inside of my definitions folder. And I can confirm inside of the assignment file, it's assigned by, and it's currently blank because this was manually deployed. I do want to quickly call out that you do need a global settings already pre-configured for the scope that you're trying to export your resources from. And what I mean by that is if I'm trying to pull all my policy sets, definitions, and assignments across my entire tenant, I have to have a pack selector that's here inside of this file to where the deployment root scope is the ID of my tenant ID or my tenant root group. This is what we end up using. So the command is going to be Export-AzPolicyResources. And if you have multiple pack selectors, you have to pass the flag to declare which pack environment you want to use. But for me, it's not needed because I only have one in this case. And you also, typically, I would recommend including the flag for include child scopes, as include child scopes will not only tell this command to look at all policy resources for at this deployment root scope of tenant ID, it will go through all the nested environments. So any nested subscriptions, management groups where there may be additional assignments, or there might be additional policy sets or definitions that are just not being used. Those will get picked up if you throw the flag include child scopes. So it's typically recommended to always include that if you're trying to get a full encompassing output of your current Azure policy resources. So we'll go ahead and run this. So it looks like this was able to successfully complete. We can see that it did notice that there was some policy assignments that it went ahead and generated the files for. Same thing for exemptions and policy sets. If we open up the output folder that got generated, we can notice that there is a definitions folder that mimics what the actual definitions folder should be inside of EPAC. So ideally, all you need to do is copy the contents that are inside of policy assignments and put them into the policy assignments folder and so forth. If we take a look at the one that I had deployed, we can notice that the one I showed at the beginning of the video for demo policy assignment is here. It's all automatically corresponded to where it's deployed to. So it's automatically mapped to the correct management group or subscription that that assignment or those resources were deployed. So there really is no need to change any of the data points here or the property values other than maybe some of the policy set names or some of the names of the assignment itself. A lot of these random characters of these string values are auto-generated for you in the back end whenever you manually create a policy set or a policy assignment. So now that you have the opportunity, it might be best practice to go and update some of these content or these values to something that's more human readable. But I'll leave that up to you. It's not absolutely required. Same thing for the name of the files. You'll notice that it's kind of like a random string of characters. This is, again, because this is the value that's automatically generated in the backend when you manually deploy it. So for me, I want to move these policy assignment templates, and I actually want EPAC to start managing them. So I'll simply copy and paste them into policy assignments. Same thing for policy definitions. If there are category groups, you'll notice that it gets automatically organized for you. And turns out there was quite a bit of policy definitions that have been deployed at some time. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of these and also place them inside of my policy definitions. And same thing for policy exemptions. We notice that there is one exemption that was created in the CSV format. So I'll copy this and place it inside of policy exemptions. And last There was a couple of policy set definitions that also got picked up, so I'll move those from the output folder into my policy set definitions in my root directory. So now I took all the output contents and just placed them into my main definitions folder. And if I was to run the build deployment plan step, it should now update and recognize that we're trying to take ownership of those Azure policy resources. Before I get to that point, I do want to just highlight that there is a policy ownership.csv that also gets generated as part of the output. This is purely just showing, out of all the resources, it was able to find what is owned by EPAC, what might be owned by different PAC environment or PAC selector more specifically, or maybe if it's an unknown owner, maybe it's manually deployed or deployed through some type of other IAC outside of EPAC. So it's good to just have some visibility to the ownership of your Azure policy resources. But let's go ahead and run the command to build the deployment plans, which we'll go ahead and we'll see in the output. It should just say that it's going to update the metadata and update the ownership of those Azure policy resources. So we'll give it a couple of minutes for this to fully complete, and we'll pick back up and I'll review the CLI output. While this is still running, I do want to call out that we output to the CLI the policy resource summary at the beginning of every single EPAC command. I do want to highlight that it does show what's currently owned by this PAC selector, by us, by EPAC, by this instance, what might be owned by different PAC selector and what is unknown. Right now, you're going to see some warnings, or before the adoption of all of the policy sets, it should kind of be all over the place, but at the end of this video, or the end of you adopting all of the policy resources into EPAC, that number should go away. It should be 0, and it should only be that this PAC selector is owning the resources. And this is a good example to showcase for the policy definitions that we're taking ownership of. You'll notice that it's simply just updating the owner or the metadata for this. And this should be the case for all the policy sets, policy definitions, and policy assignments. All right, so it was able to successfully complete. We can see that there is one file that got generated for the plan output as expected. And if we scroll up, we can see that there is some updates to the policy definitions, policy sets, policy assignments, and exemptions, everything that we were expecting. So let's go ahead and deploy the policy plan to actually do the step to have EPAC take ownership of these Azure policy resources. Depending on how many you have, if it's hundreds, if not thousands of assignments and definitions, this could take a little bit longer than just 5 seconds like you saw on my screen. But hopefully it should be rather straightforward, and you shouldn't have any errors, since it's just going to be a one-to-one copy of exporting and adopting it through EPAC. So let's go ahead and move over into the Azure portal just to confirm some things. First and foremost, I just want to check that this definition or this assignment still exists, and it should. So I'm just going to refresh it a couple times just to make sure it's there. And if we click into this assignment, we should eventually see that the assigned by property should update to say EPAC / the GUID of the owner ID, which does showcase right here. So every single time that EPAC does assign a policy assignment and it's owned by EPAC, the assigned by property should update with an EPAC / something, just to easily identify and have that metadata that EPAC owns it. So that's it. Take the time to kind of play with it, export, and see if there's any maybe shadow policy resources or definitions that might have gotten deployed over the lifespan of your tenant being up. What I do end up seeing is sometimes there might be some nested policy definitions or policy sets that were never found until you run that command. It's not that big of a deal, but at least it gives some insight to your current Azure policy resources and makes sure that you can fully feel confident when it comes to EPAC being the source of truth of all the Azure policy resources that exist inside of your environment. With that being said, if I missed anything, or if there's any additional features or content you would like to see, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if not, I'll see you in the upcoming videos. Thank you.